Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Melissa, and today we are going to be doing a crop jumper. So this jumper is designed to be more of a summery kind of jumper, but you can use any yarn, do it for any season. I have made it using all sorts of different yarns, and at the beginning of the video you would have seen some of the jumpers I've made using this pattern. But first, if you enjoy my content and want to support my channel, you can buy me a coffee at the link in the description below. Thank you so much for your support. It means the world to me. So the yarn that we are going to be using today is this gorgeous yarn here. This is my favorite yarn to use for this jumper, and I pretty much designed the jumper for this yarn. I like it that much. So this is a Moda vera, I think that's how you say it, Valley. That is the name of the yarn. It is 100% acrylic, 150 grams, and the name of this yarn is called Palm. Now there are about 8+ different colors. I have been saving this one for this tutorial. I really wanted to use this because it's just so pretty. Now also it says here that you'll need a 4mm hook. Now we are going to be using a 5.5mm hook for this, but do check your gauge and make sure what suits you the best. But this design I've designed for a 5.5mm hook. I have also done this in a 6mm hook, and that is for a more open weave for a more summery jumper. Alright, so besides this gorgeous yarn, what else will we need? We will need, I always do my chain in a hook size higher. So this is my 6.5mm hook. And then the body of the work and everywhere else is my 5.5. Now these hooks I get from Furls, which are based in America. You'll also need your scissors, your yarn needle, and a whole heap of stitch markers. Alrighty, so let's get this project started. Once you have found the end of your yarn, leave a long tail. The reason why is because we're going to use that tail to sew up one of the sides. When you have done that, make a slip knot and put that on the larger hook, so the 6.5. Now I'm making this jumper to be a size 14 to 16, so I'm going to be doing 70 stitches. If you want a smaller size, go 5 stitches less for each smaller size. So for example, if you're doing a 12 to 14, it'll be 5 stitches less, so it'll be 65, so on and so forth, going down the sizes. If you want to go bigger, go 5 stitches larger. So for example, if you're doing a 16 to 18, you will be doing 75 stitches, and so on and so forth, 5 stitches extra for bigger sizes up. I am going to do 14 to 16, so therefore I am going to do 70 stitches in my chain. Once you have your chain of 70, or the required amount of stitches you like, change your hook and get your 5.5mm hook. Now chain an extra one. And what you will be doing now is turning your chain to the back. So the front is where all the V's are. The back is where all the lumps are. So see that there on the back, they are your lumps. And we are going to be working our stitches for this first row into those lumps. It just makes a nice, neat edge. So missing that chain one you just did, that last chain, then you're going to do half double crochets. So yarn over, go into the lump on the back of that chain right there, grab a yarn, pull it through, and grab a yarn and pull through all the loops on the hook. Yarn over, going into that chain there, into that loop, yarn, grab a yarn, pull it through, and grab a yarn and pull through all the loops on the hook. Yarn over into that loop there, grab a yarn, pull it through, and grab a yarn and pull through all the loops on the hook. So you're going to be doing this all the way down for the 70 chains. And when you get to the end, I will show you what we need to do next. Now that we have finished that first row, just double check you've got the same amount of stitches that you started with. So for me, that was 70. And then what we do is we chain one, we turn our work, and then we're doing half double crochets in each stitch. So yarn over, straight into the top of that stitch, grab a yarn, pull it through, grab a yarn, pull through all 3 loops on the hook, yarn over, and you're going straight into that stitch, grab a yarn, pull it through, grab a yarn, pull through all 3 loops on the hook. So you just keep doing your stitches all the way along. So this is row number 2, and we need to do 45 rows. So I'm coming to the end of row 2, and when you go into, there's a last stitch right at the edge here. So just make sure you do your last stitch right in the edge. Chain one, turn your work, and keep going. And as I mentioned before, you will be doing 45 rows. Now this works really well for most women. It doesn't actually matter for their width size, because their length size seems to be generally around about this. However, if you have a particularly petite person, do less rows. If you have a particularly longer bodied person, do more rows. But when you are measuring this up, so basically I'd say hold it up to the back, so from the neck down, but don't go all the way down. Just go to around about the waist, because what we're going to do later on is add on a band, and that will be the decorative edging. So you need to allow that band, and we're going to do 10 rows of the decorative edging. So allow for that, so that your jumper is going to sit when it's finished just above the bottom. Alright, so keep doing your 45 rows. We're now on row number 3. So that means you've got 42 rows left. And I will meet you back here when you have done your 45 rows in total. Finished my 45 rows. And there they are. Now the next thing we need to do is mark out where the neck hole is going to go. So I suggest that you do this 19 centimeters or more. I find that that is a really good head hole for majority of people. So how I do this is I go, when I'm doing 70 stitches, I go 25 stitches in, and on my 26th stitch, I put a stitch marker. Then I count that stitch marker and I do 20 stitches, and then I put a stitch marker into that 20th stitch. Then I count from the next stitch, and that should be 25. So 25, 20 and 25 make my 70 stitches. Now, depending on what your stitch count is, I always suggest that you keep this as not around 19 centimeters. So, you know, around about 22 to 19 stitches, depending on your stitch count. All right. Now, once you have worked that out, so for me, that was 20 stitches I've got in the middle here. Go back, put your hook in, and we are only going to be working up to the stitch before that stitch marker. So those 25 stitches there. So chain one, turn your work, and continuing with your half double crochet to that stitch marker. So 25 stitches in. So I've done my 25 stitches. Now chain one, turn your work, and go back the other way. And do a total of 4 rows. When you've done your 4 rows, I will meet you back here. Completed those 4 rows, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and that's my first shoulder done. So don't end off or anything like that. What I suggest is grab the stitch marker that's in the corner here, put that in there, just so you don't lose that ending there. And what I do is I get my ball of yarn and I go to the other end, wherever it is. There we go. Grab the other end, and I use this other end to do my other shoulder. So here's your second shoulder, and we're going to work from inside the inside edge here out. Okay, now the reason why we do that is because it keeps the pattern the same. Otherwise you'll have a funny line here and it'll look a bit skew-if. It's not a biggie, but if you want it to look as perfect as it can be, start from the inside here, so at the neck edge. So what we need to do, turn it around, and not on that stitch marker because that's your neck. You're going into the next stitch. Start your yarn however you start your yarn, and your first stitch is going to go into the same stitch you started your yarn. The reason why, that creates your first stitch. If you don't do that, you'll have 24 stitches instead of 25. So do your half double crochets and do that from that first stitch there that you started your yarn all the way down to the edge. So working all the way down to here, and I'll meet you there. Okay, so we finished the first row of the second shoulder. Chain 1, turn your work, and you need to do 3 more rows. Which makes you a total of 4 rows for this shoulder, and you should finish off on the neck, so inside here. All right, so I will meet you when you have done all 4 rows. So now we're on number 2. So we have now finished those 4 rows on the other shoulder. So 1, 2, 3, 4, and finishing on the inside at the neck. Now we're finished with this side, so we can end off. So just snip off your yarn and pull your tail through. We're finished with that side. Go back to the other side where you put that stitch marker in and put your hook back in there. So take your stitch marker out, put your hook in, chain 1, turn your work, and now you will be working those 25 stitches again. So we have done those 25 stitches, and now we have to close the head hole. So what we're doing now is chaining 20 stitches, which corresponds with these 20 stitches down here. So simply chain 20, 19 and 20. Now we have to join our chain to the other side. So I hold right really tightly here and yarn over, and then grab that as well with my thumb. Then I put my hook into the first stitch on the other side and pull my yarn through. Then I tuck that under my thumb as well. It keeps it nice and tight. Yarn over, then I swap thumbs and I pull the yarn through. So that keeps that nice and tight. You don't want it all loosey and all the rest of it. It just will make a nice big gappy hole. Okay, and then what we do is we just continue our half double crocheting all the way along to the end. Alright, so that's our head hole done. And now what we need to do is we're starting the front. So we've got the back, head hole, and now we have to do the front. So chain 1, turn your work, and this is row 1 of the front that we'll be doing. So half double crochet to that chain. So you're half double crocheting up to here. I'll meet you here when you get there. Okay, so I'm up to the chain, and we are going to do the chain the exact same way as we did the starting chain for our garment. So you're not putting a stitch in the top of the V here. you are turning it and going into the loop in the back. So do your half double crochets into those loops. Now the first 1 or 2 can be a bit tricky. So you're just going straight into the loop there at the back. And remember, the reason why we're doing this is it keeps it nice and neat. All right, do that till you get to the end of the chain. Coming to the last stitch, this one can be a bit of a dodgy one, so just make sure you get right in there and get that last chain. And then once you've done that, you just can keep doing your half double crochets to the end of the row. Alrighty, so we have finished our first row of the front. So get a stitch marker and put it into that first row so you know that that was row number 1 of the front. Chain 1, turn your work and keep going. So you will be doing 40 rows for the front, which is 5 less than what you did for the back. This makes the jumper sit better. So being longer at the back than at the front. So keep going, do your 40 rows, and when you have done that, I will meet you back here. We have now finished our 40 rows on the front, and it is time to snip off the end of the yarn. But before you do that, make sure that you have finished off this side opposite to the other end, because this tail we are going to sew up this side, and we need to create a long tail on the other side to sew up this side. So I've folded the jumper together, so we need to make a long tail here. So make your long tail, snip that off, and then pull that through. Now I've already folded my jumper in half, so you can see there is the neck hole there, 1 shoulder, 2 shoulder, and there's the body. So make sure you folded it in half, and I fold it so that it is inside out. Now how I know my inside out is I always put all my tails on one side of the jumper and I make that my inside, because I'll sew them all in, and it might not be absolutely perfect, hopefully it is, but just in case it isn't, they're on the inside. I also mark with a stitch marker on the back of the neck to tell me that this is the inside of the jumper and this is the back of the jumper. Now we need to measure the side for our armholes. So get your tape measure, stretch out for 22 centimeters and measure the 22 centimeters from the fold to this point, and then place a stitch marker, which is what I've already done. And how I marry up the other side to be exactly the same, you can measure it again, but what I do first is I will run my finger down, all the way down, down, and to the same spot on the other side. So it's hard to show you because the camera won't allow it. So there's my first stitch marker, and I run along, keep going, and there's my other stitch marker. So I've placed it in the same spot. Then I turn it over, and there's my stitch marker again on the other side, and I run it all the way along until I've got the other side, and I stick the stitch marker through there. And just to double check, I do remeasure this armhole as well and make sure that it is 22 centimeters. Now it doesn't matter what size the person is. I've found that 22 centimeters actually works out for a majority of people. Alright, so once you've done that, what you then need to do is grab your yarn needle and sew up the side. Now you can sew up the side any which way you like, but the way I do it, and I found it to be neater, and that's just me personally, is I sew flat. So I put this together like so and sew flat. So like that. I was doing it like this and sewing it, but I left a big lumpy bit and it didn't look as nice on the other side either. So I actually quite like doing it this way and I find it works nice. But that's just me personally. You can sew it together however you like. So sew your sides together up to the stitch marker. Now the first one, sew it all the way up to the stitch marker, and you can end off your yarn, cut it off, you're finished. For the other side, sew it up to the stitch marker, but don't end off your tail. Now the reason why is because when you make this arm, you will do X amount of stitches, and that will be your base row, and it could be 47, 44, 50, whatever the amount of stitches. It doesn't matter how many stitches you have, but you need to have that amount of stitches exactly the same as over this side. So I've never managed yet to get both sides exactly the same. So what you need to do is leave your tail so that you can stitch up if you need to create the right width for the stitches that you require. Now this will make a bit more sense when we get to that stage. But for now, sew up the two sides, and when you've done that, come back here and I'll show you what to do next. Okay, sides are sewn up. You can see the armhole there, side there, and on the other side, armhole, and there's my tail in case I need to make any adjustments to the armhole here to match it to the other armhole when I do my foundation row for my sleeve. But we're not going to do the sleeve right now. What we're going to do is turn this the right way around. It's okay, I've already got my stitch marker there on the back to show me that that is the inside. I've already sewn in all the tails. So the next thing I'm going to do is just do a one row around the neck there to tidy it up. It's okay along here, but down here it's not quite right. So I go to the back and I get my hook and I stick it in the corner. Find the end of my yarn and start your yarn off however you start your yarn off. And then just do one row of half double crochet all the way around. You're just going straight into the top of the previous stitch. And when you're coming to that shoulder edge where you can't see the stitches and it's at the end of the rows, what I do is I go into, see that hole there, I go into there. Then I miss that next hole there and I go into the next hole there. Miss that hole there, go into the next hole there. And miss that one and going into that one. Missing that one, going into that one. Missing that one and going into there. And then that should bring me back to the stitches at the top of the previous row. So you can see there's our rows, and I'm just going to continue putting my stitches in the top of that row. And then you just repeat that same thing on the other shoulder. So you can see by doing that, I have created quite neat along that edge there. Alright, so keep going. Coming up to the other shoulder. And I'm going to put the next stitch. Now sometimes when I'm just starting onto the shoulder, so that's the row and this is the shoulder, I might do an extra stitch like in there because it's going to have less of a gap. So then I miss that hole and I go into there, miss, go into that one, miss that one, go into that one, miss that one, go into that one, miss that one, and I will be going into the same hole that I started the row in. So, and then I slip stitch the round together. So that's my starting stitch, that's my ending stitch of this round, and you just go into the top of that first stitch there, grab your yarn, pull it through, and then pull through the loop on your hook. Leave yourself a tail and just snip that off, and then just pull that through. And all you need to do now is just sew in your tails, and make sure not to pull too tight because when you sew it in you want to leave it nice and level. Okay, and that's the neck edge done, and you can see how it leaves a nice edge around the top there. Alright, now you've done that, we need to go to the bottom. And I always have the back facing to me, and I go to the corner here where the seam is. Now you might have looked at this and gone, that's way too short, what's going to happen? And yes, we're putting a decorative border down the bottom of the jumper and also on the cuffs of the sleeves. So you can use whatever stitch you like to make a decorative border. You don't even have to make a decorative border if you don't want to, and just continue doing on another 10 rows in your half double crochets. It's purely up to you. But I'm going to be doing griddle stitch for this because I really like it. And so how I'm going to start out is by putting my hook right in the corner there of that row here. So that's our last row of our jumper that we did, and I'm going right in the corner. Might help if I go with it. So see where the seam is? Go right in the seam, because when we've done our rounds, our seam is going to continue on matching this seam here. Okay, so get your yarn again and start off your yarn however you start off your yarn. To start off the griddle stitch, you always do a single crochet. So in that first stitch there, that hole there, put in your hook, grab your yarn, pull it through, and then grab your yarn and pull through the 2 loops on the hook. Now the next stitch is going to be a double crochet. So yarn over, go into the next stitch, grab your yarn, pull it through, grab your yarn and pull through the first 2 loops on the hook. Then grab your yarn and pull through the last 2 loops on the hook. So that's your double crochet. So the next stitch there is your single crochet. So hook into that hole there, that stitch there, grab your yarn, pull it through, then grab your yarn and pull through the 2 loops on the hook. And then the next stitch is a double crochet. So yarn over into that next stitch there, grab your yarn, pull it through, grab your yarn, pull through the first 2 loops on the hook, grab your yarn, pull through the next 2 loops on the hook. And that is the stitch, the pattern for the griddle stitch. So next stitch, single crochet, next stitch, double crochet, next stitch, single, next stitch, double. So do that all the way around, single, double. Now, I always will say it in my head so I don't mess up somewhere. So I'll go single, double, single, double. Or I go 1 for single, 1, and double, 2 for double. 2, 1, 2. Now the reason why I do that is because it's really easy to get yourself lost, because you can be, your mind goes wandering off somewhere and then you're like, oh my goodness, where have I got up to? So when you look back, let's say you got a phone call or somebody interrupts you, you put it down. The easiest way to know what's what Your single is smaller and your double looks like it has a little cap on the top. So single, double, so on and so forth. Okay, so keep doing that all the way around, and then when you get to the other seam on the other side, just make sure you put a stitch right in that corner there where that seam is joined together. So put it right in there, put the stitch there, but just keep going around. And when you have done your foundation row for this, and you come back here, I will meet you there and tell you what to do next. Coming to the end of the row, and so I've got my double crochet and my single crochet. Now we need to finish off with a single crochet. Now I normally would be finishing off in the same stitch that I started my row off in, but because I need to finish with a single crochet, I won't finish in there. I'll finish where I am here. If you got a double crochet here, put your single crochet into there. Alright, so now we need to join the round together. So we slip stitch into the top of the stitch that we started the round with. So just put your hook straight in the top of that stitch, grab your yarn, pull it through, and then pull through the loop on the top of the hook, on the hook. Then chain one, turn your work, and you will always start your round with a single crochet. So put your hook straight into that stitch, grab a yarn, pull it through, grab a yarn, pull through the two loops on the hook. Your next stitch is your double crochet, and it will always be on top of a double crochet. So do your double crochet, 1, 2. Your single crochet will always be on top of your single crochet. Double crochet always on the double, single always on the single. Now it's really easy to tell the difference. That's your double, there's your stitch, there's the top of your double, and a single looks like a V. So there's your single that looks like a V. There's your double that has the stitch there and the loop on the top. Alright, so you're doing your double into that loop, that stitch on the top there. And you're doing a single into that V. Double, single. And this makes it really easy that if you have to put it down to go and pat your dog because she's demanding a pat, which mine does all the time, you can pick it up and I go, I know I'm on a double. And I know that's a single. And there's my double, and so on and so forth. So continue that all the way around, and I'll show you how to join your rows together again at the end of this round. Last few stitches of this round, and so I've got my double crochet, which is my second last stitch, and my single crochet is going to go into the same stitch that I started the round in. So that's my single. Then we need to join the round together, so slip stitch in the top of that first stitch, chain one, turn your work, and then you start the whole process again. So remember, you're always starting with a single crochet, then you double, single, double. Now I did forget to mention, I always put a stitch marker into the first row, and that just shows me that's row number 1. We've done row number 2. We're starting row number 3, and we will be doing this for 10 rows. So keep going around backwards and forwards for 10 rows. So remembering that when you come back to the beginning of your round, you're doing your last stitch into the same hole as your first stitch, then slip stitch together, chain one, and turn your work and work back the other way. Alright, I'm going to leave you to do your 10 rows, and when you have finished that, come back here and I'll show you what to do next. We have finished the base of our jumper, and you can see that it creates such a lovely texture there, gives it a little bit of something for this short jumper. And working our way up, there's the neckline, and over here we have the sleeve hole. Now, we need to do the sleeves next. I've already done one sleeve, and that's what it will look like. And now it's time for me to do the second sleeve, which is the same principles as the first. However, when you start your first sleeve, make sure that it is the armhole that does not have the tail. This is the one where you do a second in case you need to sew up or undo to get the same amount of stitches as your first sleeve. So to start off both sleeves, either sleeve, you need to start in the seam. We are going to be working in the round backwards and forwards, and the seam for the sleeve needs to match with the seam for the side of your jumper. So start straight in the top of your seam, put your hook in and grab the end of your yarn. When you have the end of your yarn, start your yarn off however you start your yarn off, and now just work your stitches all the way around. It does not matter how many stitches you create, you just need to remember whatever amount of stitches you created here, you need to do exactly the same amount of stitches on your second sleeve. Now, I've already done my first sleeve, so that was 46 stitches for me. It is never the same for a single jumper I have done yet. I have never had the same amount of stitches. So when you have your yarn connected, start creating your stitches. Now what I do is I miss that first hole there and go into the next hole. Miss that next hole, go into the next hole. Miss that hole, go into that hole, so on and so forth. So basically I'm going into the top of every row. So my first stitch, missing that hole, going into this hole. Sorry, half double crochets. Miss that hole, go into the next hole. Miss that hole, go into the next hole. Missing that hole, going into the next hole. And you can see what I'm doing all the way around. You don't have to do it like this. I just find this is the easiest way to do it, and it gives a nice, neat amount of spacing around for your foundation row for your sleeve. So keep doing that all the way around, and I will meet you when you get back to this original stitch over here. When you come to the end of your round, in the last stitch will be going into the hole of the first stitch. So I'm ready to put my last stitch in, so I'm going to put it straight into the same hole I created my first stitch. Okay, now count how many stitches you've got at this time and jot that down somewhere, because you need to make sure that your other sleeve matches the same amount of stitches. So put that down somewhere. So for me, 46. This is my second sleeve. So I've put my stitches in and I know that I have 46. Doesn't often happen that way. Normally I need to sew up. Now, undo and all the rest of it. So that's why I have the tail there, so I can adjust everything that I need to make sure that I've got 46 stitches there. Now once you've put the last stitch in where the first stitch went, slip stitch together. So going into the top of that first stitch, so there's the first stitch there, going into the very top of that, just put your hook straight in, grab a yarn and pull it through, and then pull through the loop on the hook. Chain one and turn your work. Now we are going to be doing half double crochets all the way around for this next row, row number 2. We're not putting a stitch into that very first stitch there where you've done the chain one there, and there's looks like a stitch there. Do not put your stitch in there. Put it in to the next one here. So half double crochet into that next stitch, and then keep doing your half double crochets all the way around. Now a tip here, count. Count, 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 count. The amount of times you will lose a stitch somewhere if you're not counting is amazing, or gain a stitch somehow. So count, make sure that you've got the same amount of stitches all the way around. So for me, it is 46. Do this round 2 and I'll meet you at the end of the round. Coming to the end of round 2, we're coming to the end of the round, and you can see that first stitch is going into there. So we need to do our last stitch into that same stitch. Now the reason why I do that is I find that it closes up that seam a lot tighter and it looks a lot neater. So now that we've done that and I've got my 46 stitches, I'm going to go into the top of that first stitch and do my slip stitch. Chain 1, turn your work, and now start round 3. Round 3 is the same, so just miss that first stitch there, go into the next one, and do your half double crochets, count your stitches, I should say. Coming to the end of round 3, and same thing, put your last stitch in the same hole as the first stitch. Slip stitch together, putting your hook in the top of that first stitch. Grab your yarn, pull through, and pull through the loop on your hook. Chain 1, turn your work. And the fourth round, same as the other rounds. So missing that first stitch there, or what looks like a stitch, going into the next one, and half double crochet all the way around. Remember to count. End of the fourth round, and once again putting your last stitch in the same stitch as your first stitch. Slip stitch together, chain 1, turn your work, and now what we are going to be doing is a decrease round. So let me show you the other sleeve, and you can see here I've got stitch markers all the way up. So what we're doing is we're doing a row of 5, and on the 5th row you do a decrease. Another 4 rows without decrease, 5th row decrease, 4 rows without, 5th row with, 4 rows without, 5th row, so on and so forth, 6 times. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then we do the cuff in the griddle stitch or whatever stitch you've chosen. So we've done our first 4 and we're up to the first of our 5th row of decrease, and there will be 6 of those in total, making 30 rows in all. Hope that makes sense. Now I forgot to mention to put a stitch marker on the very first row, just so you know where it began. It is easy to see, especially when it's a different colour. However, sometimes it's hard. So I always put a stitch at the beginning. Now we're going, that's row number 1, 2, 3, 4. So this being the 5th row means this is a decrease row. So how do we do a decrease? Miss that first stitch, going into the next stitch. So yarn over, go into that stitch there, grab your yarn, pull it through. Go into the following stitch and then grab your yarn and pull it through, and grab your yarn and pull through all the loops on the hook. Let me run that through with you again. So missing that stitch there, go into there, yarn over, straight into that stitch there, grab your yarn, pull it through. Go into the next stitch, grab your yarn, pull it through, and then grab your yarn and pull through all the loops on the hook. And then continue half double crocheting every stitch onwards. That should leave you with 1 less stitch. So for me, that will be 45 stitches. When I've done about 10 stitches or so, I grab a stitch marker and I just put it in here just to tell me that that was my 5th row of this lot of 5 here. So let's keep going around. You should have 1 less stitch, and I'll meet you at the end of the round. So I'm up to my last stitch, which is number 45. So remember, straight into the same stitch as you started the round in. Then slip stitch the top of the stitches together. Chain 1, turn your work. And now you will be doing 4 rows without a decrease. Okay, so do these 4 rows exactly the same way as you've been doing the others, without a decrease. And then when you get to your 5th row, come back here and I will run through the decrease row again with you. And I will meet you back here when you have got to your 5th row of this section. Okay, so I've done my next 4 rows. I've joined my row together, chained 1, turn my work, and now I am going to be doing my 5th row, which in this section, which is a decrease row. So remember, missing that first one there, go into the next one, yarn over straight into that stitch, grab a yarn, pull it through, then go into the next stitch, grab a yarn, pull it through, then grab a yarn and pull through all the loops on the hook. Let me show you that again. Yarn over, straight into that stitch, grab a yarn, pull it through. Go into the next stitch, grab a yarn, pull it through, and grab a yarn and pull through all the loops on the hook. Now you've decreased, you should have 1 less stitch as you finish this row. So for me, it would be 44 stitches. And then remember, when you finish this row, put a stitch marker in. That tells you you have finished the 5th row of this section. At the end of that decrease round, the 5th round of this section, I'm just doing my last stitch, and I do have my 44 stitches. Then I'm going to slip stitch the round together, chain 1, turn my work, and now I'm going to start my 4 rows without decrease. So you can see now that I've done 1 section, 2 section, so 1, 2, 3, 4 without a decrease, 5th with a decrease. 1, 2, 3, 4 without a decrease, 5th with a decrease. And now I'm going to do another 4 and then the 5th decrease, so on and so forth, until I've done that 6 times. So we've done it twice, got 4 more times to do this. Do that, and then when you have finished that, come back and I'll show you what we do next. Alrighty, so I finished the body of the sleeve. You can see that I've done my 30 rows, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 sections of those 5 with the decrease where the stitch markers are. Okay, so now we've done that, we need to do the cuff, and the cuff is going to be griddle stitch. So we've already done that at the base of our jumper. We're just going to repeat exactly the same thing. So I'll quickly run through the start of the cuff, just so you remember what it is that you are doing. So remember that we're still working in the round, and you missed that stitch there, and you are going into the next one, same as what we've been doing for the whole sleeve, but this time we're doing a single crochet followed by your double crochet. Single crochet, double crochet. So remember to do that all the way around till you get to the beginning of the round, and I will refresh your memory of what we do next. Okay, I've come back to the beginning of the round. Now, because I have an even number of stitches and I need to finish on a single crochet, I'm not going to do my normal thing here and go into this stitch here. I'm just going to slip stitch the round off. Okay, however, if you find that you're finishing off with a double crochet here, let's say that was a double crochet there, then go straight into that first stitch there that you started the round in and do your single crochet in there. Okay, so remember, you're slip stitching the round together on your single crochet, chain 1, turn your work, and you will be skipping that first stitch as always, going into that next one and doing your single crochet, and then your double crochet, and then your single, if you can get it in there, and then your double. And remember that your single always goes on top of a single, and your double always goes on top of a double. Single on a single, double on a double. And you remember that the V stitch there is your single, and the one that has the little cap on top of the stitch is your double. Always put a double on a double and a single on a single. and work in the round, and you're doing 10 rows of griddle stitch for your cuff. When you have finished that, come back here and I will show you what to do next. Alrighty, so I'm at the end of my 10th round and I will just slip stitch that together and then snip off the end, pull that through and sew in all the ends, and that's sleeve done. Now you need to repeat this a second time for your other sleeve, and then when you have finished that, come back here. Okie dokie, so now you have both sleeves done. So there's sleeve number 1, sleeve number 2, and your jumper is now finished. So this is way too big to fit into the camera, so take a look at this. Well, everybody, I hope you have enjoyed making this crop or short jumper, and I hope yours turns out beautiful. I'm loving the colours of this, and I have made this in so many different yarns with so many different pattern ends, all sorts, and it's one of my favourite patterns that I've made. That I've designed. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I have many more crochet tutorials on my channel, so please do check them out. Please like, subscribe, and if you have liked what you've seen and would like to support me, please go to my Buy Me a Coffee link, which is down below, or you can super thank me. But otherwise, subscribe and that would be fantastic. Thank you so much for joining me on this one, and I hope to see you again very soon at one of my other tutorials. Thanks again, everyone. Bye, everyone!